Hey everyone, Dan Saavedra here from MergeYourData, and today we're going to be diving into the framework we use for attacking revenue problems. So when we come into an account, we're looking for the levers that we can pull that are going to cause the greatest amount of growth in a company. And so obviously, since not every business is the same, you can't just use the same approach and playbook every single time. You have to find out which specific playbooks to use. And so this is how we think about it. This is how we categorize and rank what we're going to do to cause the biggest growth for our clients. And so we'll dive into the exact details here. I'm also going to go over a very high level breakdown of the framework, and then we'll get into the exact details. So there's 4 areas or 4 focal points of revenue that we look at when we come into a client account: lead generation, conversion, delivery of the product or service, and then the renewal, upsell, expansion, or returning motion. And so how we actually use this framework is we're going from left to right when we're analyzing the revenue operations of a firm. We're looking at the systems, we're looking at the overall numbers, the processes, the handoffs for each of these different focal points. And so, for example, when we go into lead generation, obviously we're going to be looking at the total number of leads coming in and the sources that they're coming in from, the quality of those leads, and so on and so forth. And so then we just go down each focal point, the conversions. We look at conversions between life cycle stages. We look at deal conversion rates. And then we go into delivery, and we're looking at the exact delivery process, the capacity, quality of that delivery. And then we're looking at the renewal cycle, the net revenue retention, and stuff like that. And so after we do that, we prioritize the focal point based off the type of business, the stage that they're in the state. So depending on what industry you're in, depending on if you're B2B or B2C, depending on how your systems look, how your processes and team structure look, we're using all that information to prioritize and see which specific area we are going to fix first. So for some businesses, it might be the conversion focal point. There's issues there that we're looking to solve. For some, it might be the renewal, upsell, expansion, or returning motion that we want to solve instead. And so we're just going to attack the focal point to increase revenue or profit, depending on what we saw from our initial analysis. Now, one note is that we do typically use this for B2B companies between 5 and 30 million in revenue. It can be adapted to companies bigger and smaller, but this framework that I'm talking about today is specifically for that range and type of company. Now, before I get into the exact details of the metaphor we use and what we look into, I just wanted to note that we've done this over 100 times. So if you have any questions about where you should focus on in your business, or you want someone to help out with this process, just go to our website, book a call. We'll dig into your account specifically and see what opportunities are there for you. And so let's move on here. So overall, this is how we look at the system as a whole. This is our approach. And so we think of RevOps from a physics perspective. And specifically for this type of framework, it's more of a fluid dynamics approach. Sounds boring, but the metaphor will make sense when we dig into specific states here. But the reason why we look at it that way is because the whole system is connected. And so it helps us pinpoint exactly where we need to focus in order to make sure that flow is maximized for the system itself. And so overall, how we think of it is you have your market demand, your fluid coming in. You have the calibrated intake from marketing. And so obviously you want quality input. You don't want to put bad gasoline in an engine, right? And so we want to make sure that the flow is correct. The quality of what's coming in is correct. And then after that, we have a smooth conversion. So any conversion points, we want to make sure that the friction is correct, that the conversion rates are what we want from stage to stage. If they're too high or too low, it indicates a problem. 3, we have the onboarding, which should also be frictionless here. It really shouldn't change, like in terms of the experience, it shouldn't change for users. It should get easier as they're getting onboarded, as they have their products and services delivered. And then this loop here is specifically the returning, the expansion type revenue. So we don't want to just dispose of all the waste per se and just let a lead flow out of the system and never sell to them again. We worked hard acquiring that customer in the first place. And so we want to make sure that we're recycling a certain percentage of those into expanded revenue, returning revenue, and not waste through churn. So this type here is basically your churn in the system. It's going to happen, right? So we want to make sure that it's a healthy amount. So this is an ideal state. The capacity is matched with the input. There's low friction throughout the process, and you're not wasting resources on the back end. And so this means that NRR is over 100%. You get a little flywheel effect and so forth. So this is ideal state, but when we're looking at a system to see what's going wrong, it's not going to look like that. And so instead, there's a couple different situations that I'll go into on this specific video. But first off, there's a situation where there's a lot of volume and pressure from a marketing standpoint, and things just aren't happening on the sales side or on the nurturing side. And so basically what that looks like is you might be pumping a ton of leads in through the front end here, but then they go cold because there's back pressure. So basically you cannot convert them efficiently or effectively enough. And so you have all this back pressure where the quality decreases, the likelihood that they're actually going to convert decreases, and it creates a huge problem. So this is a one unique situation that we see. People might be pushing in a lot of really good leads, but their sales team is just not effectively picking them up, or they're not effectively converting them into an actual booked call. And so then what we get here is the sales conversion bottleneck. And so you can see that there is a situation of high velocity, but low pressure. And so people are so distracted on the conversion side of things that they're not able to give them a solid sales experience to keep momentum and to convert them into an actual customer. And so they might do a few random touches with this prospect, and then never actually follow up, provide the resources, guide them through the sales process as they should. And so what ends up happening is you have a starved flow here in terms of delivery and onboarding. It creates a situation of scarcity with your delivery process. And so you just don't have enough throughput here to justify the capacity that you have. So as an example, any company has products and services that they're delivering. They have a team that's responsible for it. And one of the factors or numbers that's always looked at is the utilization rate. You might be looking at this yourself. And if you are starving your conversions here so that there's not enough utilization of your team, you're going to be focusing on this area and seeing if you're going to need to cut people, or if you can increase the volume even more on the front end, which isn't the right approach, in order to provide your team with more projects to work on so they're utilized at the correct rate. But the issue here is the conversion rates. You're having a plenty of volume come in, but the sales team is just not effectively converting them. And so this causes a bunch of downstream problems. Churn hurts way more. You also don't have any way to recycle effectively these existing customers and expand on them and renew on them, just because of the relationship that changes. Your team that's delivering has so little to do that it almost creates what we see like a scarcity type vibe or approach from your team. And so it actually becomes harder to renew or expand on these existing accounts just because your team doesn't have enough to do. They don't have enough reps going on, repetitions with other accounts. And so it just hurts this overall process because there's too much focus on it, when in reality, the focus needs to be on the conversion aspect. So that's when things go wrong, number one. When things go wrong, number two here, and why this metaphor is useful, is when there's not enough coming in the top end here. There's low volume and low pressure. And so this leads to a scarcity type approach from sales. You might have things go through quickly because of that, but you also might push people away. So it sometimes causes a conversion issue as well. But overall, the main issue here is obviously the lead generation. And so this would be the focus point of when things go wrong and why we would specifically look at the lead generation part of the revenue operations first. This obviously causes downstream issues. Once again, critically starved flow here for delivery and onboarding. Churn hurts more, renewal and expansion. It just isn't there. These are the questions that we look at for focal point number 1 with lead generation. And the ultimate goal here is to understand if lead generation isn't producing enough for the existing teams and delivery systems. We want to see if there's enough flow coming in from the front end of the system, if it's a high quality flow that we can use in the sales process and optimize, that the delivery team is going to get enough projects from the existing conversion rates, so on and so forth. So we're looking at 5 main things: overall volume and the quality of that volume, the coverage, if we're actually over the total pipeline value that we would need to meet our revenue goals, the velocity in terms of the time to first touch, and then aging as well, of which ones have not been contacted for a long period of time. That indicates whether or not lead generation is the actual problem or if it's a conversion issue instead. Focal point number 2, the conversions aspect. We want to find where conversions could be squandered, causing perfectly good opportunities to go to waste. And so obviously we don't want to just be pushing in a bunch of leads that aren't converting or we're not nurturing or talking to correctly. And so we look at 5 things here. So volume in terms of the number of opportunities or deals created, is that actually enough? 2, the capacity. Does the average rep have the correct capacity or have the correct number of deals or opportunities to manage at once? We look at the friction in terms of the conversion rates between each stage, stagnation, how much of that pipeline is stale, and then turbulence in terms of the variance between the forecast and what we're actually achieving there. For focal point number 3, the delivery side, we want to make sure that delivery isn't damaging reputation and causing delays in the time to value. And that's the main point right there. We want to make sure that time to value is fast so that it reduces churn, reduces bounce back between delivery and sales, so on and so forth. And so we look at throughput, we look at the velocity in terms of the time to value, we look at quality, so any rework percentages or refund percentages, and then capacity. Typically, we want delivery teams around 85% capacity. That's usually like the max that you can achieve. Anything significantly below that or even above that is a concern. And then last but not least, we have focal point number 4, renewal and upsell. So overall, we want to see if significant growth is missed because renewals and upsells aren't. For the companies we work with, this is a huge gap and often a really big opportunity for growth. They're not nurturing, renewing, upselling existing customers on additional products or services. And so they end up missing out on a large chunk of revenue. Typically, it'll just be some manual approach that they're taking, where if they think of it or there's an account that pops up during a review, they'll pursue additional opportunities, but it's not systemized at all. And so we look at 5 things here: retention volume, the gross revenue retention per client, the growth volume. So is net revenue retention below 100%? Are we growing the flow itself? 3, blind spots. What percent of renewals enter the 90-day expiration window without a health score, if you can get to that point? Upsell potential, and then product health as well, if there's any churn issues going on. And so overall, we're looking at these questions for these 4 focal points, and I'll go back here to see which ones we need to address first, where the actual issues are happening. We quantify what's going on in each of these focal points and what that potential impact is. And so when we go into an account, we're specifically giving the revenue impact of the issues that we find in each of these focal points. So maybe you have a lead generation issue where if you can increase the number of leads by X% and keep your conversions at the same amount, then you have a revenue impact of this. Maybe it's conversions. So you have a certain number of leads coming in, 25% of them are never even contacted, and you could lift revenue by this amount if you fix that issue. So that's kind of how we go through each focal point, and then we'll rank: 1, we need to attack conversions and fix that. 2, we need to attack renewals and upsells and fix that, and so on and so forth. And so you can take this system back to your own business. You can use the metaphor of the fluid dynamics to understand how that system interacts and where choke points might be happening. And then if you have any other questions or you want an expert to come in and a team to come in and actually figure out what this situation looks like for you, go ahead and go to the link in the description and book a meeting with myself. and we can jump into your specific situation and see how we can identify which growth levers could be pulled and which focal points can be fixed so that you can attack your revenue problems systematically and actually get the results that you're looking for. Well, so here's some testimonials just to wrap up this presentation here. Hopefully you found some useful information here in this video. Hopefully you're able to pull back some of these approaches and metaphors to your own systems and try to understand your revenue operations and how you can attack revenue problems in a systematic way. Once again, appreciate you watching. I'm Dan Saavedra from MergeYourData, and I look forward to talking to you soon.